Great multitudes followed him, but hidden among them was a man broken, rejected, and cast out, a man with leprosy. As the first light of dawn crept over the rugged mountain, Jesus descended from the heights where he had been teaching and praying. The air was cool and filled with a sense of expectancy, for word had spread of his wisdom and the miracles he had performed. Great multitudes, men and women from distant villages and nearby towns, gathered at the foot of the mountain, eager to see him, to hear his words, and perhaps to witness something extraordinary. They followed him, their hearts full of hope, their eyes fixed on the one who spoke with authority and compassion. The crowd was diverse, young and old, rich and poor, the healthy and the afflicted, all drawn together by a longing for healing, for truth, and for a glimpse of the divine. Suddenly, from among the multitude, a man emerged, his appearance marked by suffering and isolation. He was a leper, a man shunned by society, forced to live on the outskirts of towns, separated from family and friends, yet, in this moment, he found the courage to approach Jesus. With humility and reverence, he knelt before him, his voice trembling with both hope and desperation. "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." These words were more than a plea for physical healing. They were an act of faith, a recognition of Jesus' power and mercy. The crowd watched in silence, some recoiling in fear of the man's disease, others moved by his boldness and vulnerability. In a world where lepers were untouchable, where fear and stigma kept them apart from all others, Jesus did the unthinkable. He reached out his hand, closing the distance between himself and the suffering man. With a voice full of kindness and authority, he said, "I am willing. Be cleansed." In that simple, powerful gesture, Jesus not only offered healing but also restored dignity and hope to a man who had known only rejection. The touch was gentle, yet it carried the weight of divine compassion, a touch that spoke of acceptance, love, and the breaking of barriers that had long divided people. Instantly, before the eyes of all who watched, the leprosy vanished. The man's skin was restored, smooth and healthy, the marks of his suffering erased in a moment. The transformation was complete and undeniable, a miracle that left the crowd in awe. For the man who had lived in isolation and shame, this was not just a physical healing, but a restoration of his place in the community, a renewal of hope and purpose. The air was filled with a sense of wonder, as those present realized they had witnessed the power of God at work through Jesus. Then Jesus spoke to the man, his words gentle but firm, "See that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them." In this instruction, Jesus honored the traditions of the law, ensuring the man's healing would be recognized by the community and the religious leaders. It was a call to gratitude and obedience, a reminder that every miracle is both a personal blessing and a testimony to the greater work of God. As the man walked away, his heart overflowed with joy and thankfulness, his life forever changed by a single touch and a few simple words. And the crowd, having witnessed this act of compassion and power, would carry the memory of that morning with them, a story to be told and retold, a testament to the love and authority of Jesus. The Son of God reached out to the untouchable. In the midst of a barren and silent city, where the wind carried only dust and the echoes of distant footsteps, a solitary figure appeared. This was a man whose life had been marked by suffering and isolation, a leper shunned by society, forced to live on the outskirts, away from the warmth of community and the comfort of human touch. His days were spent in loneliness, his nights in fear, and his heart ached for hope. Yet on this day, something stirred within him, a glimmer of faith, a desperate longing for healing. He had heard whispers of a man named Jesus, a teacher and healer whose compassion knew no bounds. Gathering his courage, the leper approached, his body trembling, his spirit both fearful and expectant. He fell to his knees before Jesus, the dust swirling around him, and with a voice trembling with emotion he implored, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." In that moment the world seemed to hold its breath. The leper's words were not just a plea for physical healing, but a cry for acceptance, for restoration, for a chance to be whole again. He did not demand, nor did he presume. He simply placed his hope in the willingness of Jesus, trusting that mercy might reach even him. Jesus looked upon the man, and in his eyes there was no disgust, no fear, no hesitation, only compassion. Moved deeply by the man's suffering, Jesus did something no one else would dare. He reached out his hand and touched the leper. In that simple, profound gesture, centuries of stigma and rejection were shattered. The touch of Jesus was not just a physical act, but a declaration of love and acceptance. It was as if he was saying, "You are not untouchable. You are not forgotten. You are seen, you are valued, and you are loved." With a voice full of kindness and authority, Jesus spoke, "I am willing. Be cleansed." These words carried the power of hope, the promise of transformation, and the assurance that no one is beyond the reach of grace. As soon as Jesus spoke, an extraordinary thing happened. The leprosy, which had clung to the man's body for so long, vanished instantly. His skin, once marred and broken, was restored, smooth, whole, and healthy. The pain and shame that had weighed him down for years were lifted in a single moment. The man was cleansed, not only in body, but in spirit. The dawn broke over the horizon, and with it came a new beginning. The leper, now healed, stood in awe, overwhelmed by gratitude and wonder. The impossible had become reality, and his life was forever changed. The miracle was not just in the healing, but in the love that had reached out to him when all others had turned away. Jesus, knowing the significance of what had just occurred, spoke to the man with gentle urgency. He strictly warned him and sent him away at once, saying, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing those things which Moses commanded, as a testimony to them." These instructions were not merely about following tradition, they were an invitation for the man to be fully restored to his community. By presenting himself to the priest and making the required offering, the man would be officially declared clean, able to return to his family, his friends, and his life. Jesus cared not only for the man's physical healing, but for his dignity, his relationships, and his place in society. He wanted the man to be recognized not as an outcast, but as someone restored and whole. Yet the joy and wonder of the miracle could not be contained. The man, overwhelmed by gratitude and unable to keep silent, went out and began to proclaim his story freely. He told everyone he met about the compassion and power of Jesus, about the touch that had changed his life. Word spread quickly, echoing through the empty streets and across the barren landscapes. People from all walks of life heard the news, those who were sick, those who were broken, those who had lost hope. The story of the leper's healing became a beacon, drawing others who longed for mercy and restoration. The city, once silent and deserted, now buzzed with anticipation and hope. But as the news spread, it became impossible for Jesus to enter the city openly. The crowds grew larger and the demand for his presence became overwhelming. So Jesus remained outside in deserted places, away from the noise and the crowds, yet still accessible to those who truly sought him. Even in the solitude of the wilderness, people came to Jesus from every direction. They traveled from distant villages and towns, braving the harshness of the desert and the uncertainty of the journey, drawn by the hope of healing and the promise of compassion. The story of the leper's encounter with Jesus became a symbol of hope for all who felt lost, rejected, or unworthy. It was a reminder that no one is beyond the reach of love, that even in the most desolate places, grace can find us. The crowds that gathered were not just seeking miracles, they were seeking the presence of the one who saw them, who touched them, who loved them without condition. And so, the legacy of that day lived on, as people continued to come, hearts open and expectant to the one who makes all things new. Jesus was moved with compassion. His love drew crowds from every direction. In the midst of his travels, as Jesus entered a certain city, The air was thick with anticipation. The streets were crowded, yet there was a sense of isolation for some. Among the many who watched him pass, there was one man who stood apart from the rest, a man whose body bore the unmistakable marks of leprosy. His skin was ravaged, his clothing tattered, and his presence a silent cry for help. In those days, leprosy was not just a physical affliction, it was a sentence to a life of loneliness, shame, and exclusion. People with leprosy were forced to live on the outskirts, shunned by society, and forbidden from entering the city or temple. The pain of the disease was matched only by the pain of being cut off from family, friends, and community. Yet, despite the risk, this man had heard of Jesus, the healer, the teacher, the one who welcomed the outcast. Hope flickered within him, fragile but persistent, urging him to seek out the one person who might see beyond his disease. Summoning all his courage, the man approached Jesus. Overwhelmed by desperation and reverence, he fell on his face in the dust before him. His voice trembled as he pleaded, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." These words were more than a request for physical healing. They were a confession of faith, a recognition of Jesus' authority and compassion. The man did not demand, he simply acknowledged Jesus' power and left the decision in his hands. In that moment, the crowd held its breath. Many would have recoiled, afraid of contamination, but the man's humility and trust were unmistakable. He knelt in the dirt, not caring about the stares or whispers, focused only on the hope that stood before him. Jesus, moved with compassion, did something no one expected. He reached out his hand and touched the man. In a world where even the slightest contact with a leper was forbidden, this gesture was radical, even shocking. But for Jesus, compassion outweighed convention. He looked into the man's eyes and spoke with gentle authority, "I am willing. Be cleansed." In that touch, there was healing not just for the body, but for the soul, a restoration of dignity, a breaking of barriers, a declaration that no one is beyond the reach of God's love. The power of Jesus' words and his touch brought hope where there had been only despair. Instantly, the man's leprosy vanished. The sores disappeared, his skin was restored, and the weight of years of suffering lifted in a moment. The transformation was complete and undeniable, a miracle witnessed by all who were present. The man, who had been an outcast, now stood whole and free. The sunrise breaking through the clouds seemed to echo the new beginning in his life. Relief, gratitude, and awe filled his heart as he realized he had been given not just healing, but a chance to rejoin the world he had lost. But Jesus, ever mindful of the greater purpose, instructed the man with care. He charged him to tell no one about what had happened. Instead, he directed him to go and show himself to the priest. This was not just a formality, it was a crucial step in restoring the man's place in society. According to the law of Moses, only a priest could declare a person clean and allow them to return to their community. Jesus wanted the man to follow the proper steps, to honor the traditions, and to let his healing be a quiet testimony rather than a spectacle. The journey to the priest was a journey back to belonging, to acceptance, and to a life restored. Jesus also told him to make an offering for his cleansing, as was commanded in the law. This act was both a sign of gratitude and a public acknowledgement of God's mercy. The offering was a tangible way to give thanks, to mark the end of suffering, and to celebrate the gift of a new beginning. It was a reminder that healing is not just for the individual but for the whole community, a restoration of relationships, a renewal of hope, and a witness to the power of faith. As the man stood before the priest, surrounded by those who once shunned him, his very presence was a testimony to what had happened. He was living proof of the compassion and authority of Jesus, and of the fulfillment of the law as Moses had commanded. The story of his healing would quietly ripple through the community, a reminder that no one is beyond hope, and that faith, humility, and the touch of grace can transform even the most desperate life. Leprosy meant shame, isolation, despair, but Jesus touched the untouchable. He restored not only a body but a soul. He gave back dignity, he gave back family, he gave back life. His words still echo, I am willing, be cleansed. What he did for the leper he can do for you. No shame is too deep, no wound is too great. The love of Jesus reaches even to you. Come to him, trust him, cry out as the leper did. Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And listen as he whispers back, I am willing, be cleansed.